And so taking time to rest. So a lot of people see rest as this reward that they have to earn for themselves. And they have to justify their rest. For most of us, you've been burning the candle hard enough, long enough at both ends, that rest should be your requirement right now. Most people need way more rest in their life. In fact, they need to prioritize it, right? When it comes to, but rest in the right way, and not rest full of distraction and, numbing and, all of that stuff. That's not real rest. Like rest to the point where you actually allow whatever's running under the surface to actually come up. All right. Hey there, and welcome to today's episode where I want to talk about why sometimes resting feels wrong or unsafe, and why we feel this incessant need to always be busy, always be accomplishing, and how to really start to unbreak that, right? Or undo that loop. And more importantly, how to teach yourself to feel safe resting. And this is going to be counter advice, right, to a lot of the mainstream narrative that teaches you to just grind and, add more to your schedule. And, this what happens is that the more and more we add to our schedule or our output, and we don't take time for input, eventually our cup gets so full and our emotional tank gets so full that we just can't do it anymore. We end up getting really sick. So our body says no for us and makes us rest. We start getting snappy and blow up at, people in our lives. Or we just eventually just burn out completely. We just have no energy for anything, and everything feels overwhelming and feels like we're just drowning all the time. This is a normal experience with a lot of people who, I meet that come through TBC and, work with me and my team. And I want to talk about the idea of just resting and really try to frame that, in a way that makes it achievable. Because the reality is, when you're in a state of fight or flight and you're in a state of anxiety, resting doesn't feel safe. The hypervigilance that you're experiencing, the sounds are going to, sounds are going to be amplified, right? Things in your environment are going to feel amplified. You're going to feel uneasy. You're going to feel like you have to do something. Now, part of, and this is like a multi-layered issue, right? So one of the issues is that most people, what I've learned is that when they're resting, they're thinking about working or, doing something else. And when they're working, they're thinking about resting. So they never are fully in whatever they're doing. That's, I think, problem one, is actually learning to be fully present in what you are doing, whether it is work or whether it is rest, how to fully immerse yourself in that. The other issue is because we fear our emotional states and we, push and suppress and repress, what we do is we take on personas to protect ourselves from our emotions. So one of those very common personas is just the busy person. Busyness allows us to stack up our days and fill our hour slots with things so that we don't have to confront what naturally kind of arises when we're not busy. See, because when you understand that your emotions, and especially all the stored emotions, things you haven't processed, right? These pockets of emotion that are in your system, they will naturally surface via triggers or just being by yourself with yourself. Like, they have a very natural way of coming to the surface. Now, what you do with them when they're at the surface is what matters. It's not whether or not that's going to happen. That's just a normal kind of clearing experience. Most people, again, they're hiding and running from this experience right here. That's why they're so busy. That's why they're the overachiever. That's why they do all these things. And they think that these things will eventually kind of put this to rest. But what ends up happening is, once they achieve one goal, right, they get the promotion, or, they get the dream house, or they get the whatever it is, right, that number in the bank, right, that everyone chases. Once you get that, all of a sudden you're like, okay, this should create a feeling in me. And then all of a sudden it doesn't. And that's generally when people really self-sabotage, is what I've seen. So the person will just blow up their relationship, or they'll sabotage their job. They'll go blow a bunch of money, in some weird way, and kind of just essentially deconstruct the whole thing that they built so that they can have something to work on and focus on externally. And when you realize that your source of suffering is right here in you, like what suffering is these lower states of emotion. Yes, there are things in the outside world that are, obviously correlated to suffering. But at the end of the day, what most people's suffering truly is their want to escape from these lower states. The guilt, the shame, the embarrassment, humiliation, the fear of guilt, shame, humiliation, embarrassment, right? The fear that just runs incessantly in the background, constantly driving, that persona of the overachiever to like perform to make sure that experience doesn't happen, right? When you see that that's just suffering and that we call it life, you then begin to realize that there's something else available. And intuitively, right, we all know this. Intuitively, we all pursue this, actually. That's, in many ways, that's what a lot of people are ultimately pursuing, and anything they're doing is the end of suffering, right? If you really think about, and you're really honest with yourself, why you want something, you think that thing will create a certain feeling state in you. Because like the litmus test is, right, it's like, okay, let's say that you're like, I want to be a billionaire. And you're like, okay, cool. I'm going to organize it. I talked to the richest people in the world. I got them all to donate $100 million, 10 of them. I'm going to give you $1 billion. But the catch is that you have to be wildly anxious and depressed for the rest of your life while you have it. Like, would you really want the money? If you got the perfect relationship, but you had to be miserable the whole time, would you take it? And there may be some people that are like, yeah, I'd still take it, and whatever, that's fine. For the majority of us, though, we're kind of like, we have enough foresight to be like, no, I don't want that, right? We want the thing, whatever it is, because we believe that it will create the state. And when you realize that creating the state is not so much about doing things that elevate yourself, but letting go of the emotions that you don't know what to do with and running from, you begin to realize why resting is so challenging. Because resting puts you at a standstill where this stuff comes up. It just has this natural way of surfacing. This is why people who do meditation will say things like, I can't meditate because my mind is going too fast, or I'm feeling all this stuff in my body I don't want to feel. And it's like, well, yeah, that's the reason that you meditate, is to actually learn to confront that, because that's just going on in the background all the time. And you just sitting still. Meditation didn't cause that. Meditation surfaced it, right? When you look at doing, like in TBC, for instance, right? We do weekly live, emotional releases for, like it's like a 1 hour session. I mean, generally the release is somewhere around 30 minutes, but like, it's we kind of set it up and so on and so forth. But my point being is like, most people just tell themselves, I don't have time for that. That's not that important. But interestingly enough, it's the thing that runs their whole life all the time. And rest is one of those things that kind of shows you what's really going on underneath the surface. Because if you sit down and you all of a sudden start to feel uncomfortable and I have to move, oh my gosh, I need to go do something, I need to be achieving, that's the program that's just running all the time. It's not that you're actually in danger, because most of you will sit there and be like, oh, I'm sitting on my couch, I'm laying down on a hammock, or whatever it is that you do to rest, right? Go to the beach, go to the forest, go to the desert, go to your place where you just want to like unwind. Most people need some kind of substance to actually help them get to bypass the emotional state. So they're, they need the alcohol, they need the marijuana, they need the weed, they need the pill, they need the whatever it is, just to even bypass that. A lot of people, their rest actually includes just immersing themselves in distraction. So I have to have music in the background going on. I can't sit in silence. I have to have a podcast, and I have to be watching something, right? Their rest actually involves distraction. Like real rest is unplugging from every distraction and just being able to sit with yourself. There's a famous quote that, and I believe his name's Blaine or Blaine. I'm spacing on the name, but I'll link it, or we'll post it up here when we edit it. But the quote reads that the main source of man's problems is his inability to sit in a room quietly by himself. And I just think about that, right? Because like that's the issue, right? That's the issue, is that we can't just sit by ourselves. And so taking time to rest. So a lot of people see rest as this reward that they have to earn for themselves, and they have to justify their rest. For most of us, you've been burning the candle hard enough, long enough at both ends, that rest should be your requirement right now. Most people need way more rest in their life. In fact, they need to prioritize it, right? When it comes to, but rest in the right way, and not rest full of distraction and, numbing and, all of that stuff. That's not real rest. Like rest to the point where you actually allow whatever's running under the surface to actually come up, to actually confront and go through that, so that stops unconsciously running you. And most of us think that we need that to be successful, to achieve, to whatever. And it's actually like, no, you can live and operate from higher planes of consciousness and be way more successful at any aspect of your life than you ever thought possible. Because when you're operating from these lower states, you're doing everything to avoid pain, and that's the pursuit. And the hiding in the busyness is actually what the source of your suffering is, for the most part. And no matter what destination or outcome you think you need to achieve externally, it just will never be enough, because you're always running from what's actually going on right here. And until you take the time, you take the courage to make the space to confront all this, to begin releasing and letting go of all this that's running, happiness, joy, fulfillment, it will always just elude you just by a little bit. It will always feel like it's right there. And that's the illusion that we create. It's the illusion that we fall into. So when we're moving into this week, the kind of the theme that we want to really talk about is, and really want to start implementing, is actually practicing and learning how to truly rest, and giving yourself space and time for that, and making that an absolute priority in your life. So with that, I hope this was helpful. We have some great resources over for you at restoredminds.com. I have some links down in the notes. Also, if you enjoyed this, please help us out by liking and subscribing as well, as it really helps our show. So thank you so much for your time today. I wish you nothing but the best and an absolute great week, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Talk soon. Hey there, this is Matt Codde, and I just want to say thank you for taking the time to watch that episode. And if you found it helpful, we have some other episodes available for you as well that we've linked here. And if you're looking for additional resources, I have links down in the notes, or you can head over to restoredminds.com/start to get started with some new free resources that we have available. Thanks so much, and look forward to seeing you soon.